All right, so as mentioned, Melissa had a doctor's appointment at 4, right? Something like that, 4 o'clock. And she didn't get in until 5:15. So I just sent her a text saying, relax, no reason to.
Well, if you don't mind, let's get this going. So
That's good.
it is Tuesday, September 12th, 5:30. I'm calling this Finance Committee meeting to order. And if you'll all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I'm Director McDay. This is Director Fickus, our General Manager. Paul Kelly is here, along with the Admin Assistant, Kayla Fox. If anybody has any comments not on our agenda, now is the time to raise your hand and approach the podium. If not, we'll proceed with the meeting. All right, open time is done. July activity report.
Yeah, to the chair, I know that the community and the board already saw the July activity report and the August 16th, then August 30th meeting. But earlier today, we were able to print out our first cut of the August report. It should be in the back, copies in the back somewhere, and there should be copies of it at the table there. So really for your review, I would just point out a few things. One of the interesting elements I think you saw in the July report, you know, kind of the bottom line of them, you know, that 1 month was a negative 8,600, and then you'll see the bottom line of the August was a positive 292.
Yeah.
Another, but this is very preliminary. There's a few things that still aren't in this one.
If I can interrupt for a second, I did not see a WINAC payment.
For August, well, there should have been, so that one.
I
We'll
was
see where
looking
it
at
is.
water and whatnot and didn't see it.
But the thing that we'll point out more when we have our board meeting next week is, this is one of your early chances to see, some of the results. You saw, increased revenue in July, and then a whopping increased revenue in your base rate of 190,000 this time. So again, this is part of the delinquencies, and all of that, close to $100,000 that come in over the last 6 weeks. Because if you divide that out, that's 3,343 base rates. So that's obviously a lot of makeup of base rates.
43,000 more.
Yeah.
Just in August.
And then the other thing I would just point out is in July, we received 32,000 from Centerville. And then now it's reported in here that it's 58,000. So you might recall at the last meeting, we had sort of our FY23 report, and we were down 32,000 from Centerville. So we need to do some accounting because they obviously paid bills for that fiscal year in this fiscal year, and to make that fiscal year more correctly balance out, we need to get that 32,000 over there. So,
Is there a way to ask them to pay by June 30th?
well, I think next time, yes, but we didn't think of it this time because
Yeah.
we didn't know about that issue in particular. But, I mean, because here we've gotten $90,000 just in 2 months, so clearly that first 32 of it is the 32 that we were missing from the previous fiscal year.
Right. Good.
Yep.
I'm only seeing a small amount for the SCADA projects, electrical. Item 41405, just $875.
Okay, well, that is a really good question. That is specifically to the SCADA at the, I'm not really sure why she put it under capital improvements. maybe. But, this was, Bill had in his budget last year purchased a new SCADA machine up at the treatment plant. And, some of the implementation from PACE is bleeding over into this year, and that's what that is.
Is that part of a grant? I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, it's not. So the grant monies is 50525, and that'll eventually get broken out.
Or just the engineering?
Yes, so.
Okay. Didn't I see another 50,000 go into PACE? September, it'll come out in the activity report.
Yes.
September. Okay. So if you don't mind, is that gonna put a pinch on us financially, having to pay some of these things in advance and wait for reimbursement?
Yes.
Okay. So we can discuss ways of mitigating it. We know we have that line of credit, but it's only 75,000. And we don't have a lot in our emergency reserves. It's what, maybe $1,000? So
Correct.
we need to come up with a way to build some of those reserve accounts so that we can fund our portion of the grants.
Well, yeah, I guess we could use this opportunity to have that conversation. So clearly, the community and the board have really wanted us to do everything we can with grants and pursue grants. And as I think I told you 8 months ago, my first goal was to implement the grants that we already had, because they'd obviously been languishing around. But it's really become very evident in the last 6 weeks or so that the lack of reserves that the district does not have anymore, like around $800,000, that really would be our financing. So the downside of grants, especially the way the state operates, is we get a contractor bill. We're really obligated in most cases, unless you have a different agreement with them, to pay that bill within 30 days. Under state contracting rules, they have an obligation to pay their subs within 30 days, within 20 days. So the way the state does that is, so you pay your bills, and then another 30 days, and after 90 days, you can wrap all of those things that you paid into a package, you send it to the state to get reimbursed.
But there's a delay factor from the state too, isn't there?
Yeah, well,
Correct.
just the
6
90
weeks or
days
more?
is bad
You
enough.
can take them 90 days. So
Okay.
for the SCADA project, the South Wells SCADA project, since it's a $470,000 project, I think we're gonna be able to find, we might have to use our line of credit, to get through that. But they had promised that they would reimburse on a more rapid scale. We sent in our bills. 5 days later, we got a response back. We can't process this until you answer these 3,000 questions. So this is the game the state plays.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think we're gonna make it work with this project. It's gonna squeeze us, but we're gonna make it work. And like I said, we may need to use a little bit of our line of credit to get us through some of the critical months. The second major project is the backwash ponds relining project, okay? Now this is, post-car fire, all the rest, so we got $2 million commitment from FEMA, Callaway-S, and about a $3 million commitment from the state. So a $5 million project. So when we go to construction, the district cannot finance it in the way that we're currently financing. So one way you go and do this one is you go out and get a $1 million line of credit.
Right.
And you make your payments to the contractor, and then you get reimbursed. You cannot get reimbursed from the state for the financing costs.
Right.
So,
And that'll be thousands.
yeah, thousands. So that is a form of doing it, and I would strongly argue that for a $5 million project of which it's completely paid for by the state and federal government, $50,000 worth of interest costs to finance it is probably a reasonable cost to the district, okay? I mean, I think it is. In other words, a lot of projects are a $5 million project and you get a 50% grant, and the district has to come up with the other 50%. So that's one way to do it. Now, you can go to iBank, you can infrastructure bank, you can go to the other place to finance it. And I've been looking around to see if there's some things out there.
Okay.
The other thing that Pace and I have been talking about is they're putting together the design and bid documents now, is actually having the contractor finance it and wrap that finance into their overhead and operating, and that way we can get reimbursed from the state.
I like that.
And though, but we do need in that contract an acceptance by them that when they submit an invoice, they won't necessarily get paid for 120 days. That's kind of the max, otherwise they have rights to charge interest and all this other kind of stuff. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take that invoice and turn it around and every 30 days get that to the state with the hope that in 90 days they'll pay us and then we'll pay the contract. But it means that it'll be part of the process. It'll mean it will cost us a little more money in administrative stuff. And you know, the district did a very wise thing with their $1 state loan charge that we have as a fee. The way I read it, that was always there because they didn't know at the time that all of this backwash ponds project would be fully funded. So it was gonna help match that. So we could use some of that money for financing costs or admin costs, or turning over these bills are gonna be costlier than waiting every 90 days, right? So if you're gonna do it every month, it takes a little admin time. The same thing for the distribution grant rehab project. That dollar was to kind of help match that or finance that. So again, we don't know until we get into it, but this is a good time. I was gonna bring it up at another one and maybe even bring it up to the board next week. These are things that we're battling with to try to figure out how to make sure we can deliver on these projects. But it's a real hidden hurdle to grant implementation for a district that drains reserves.
Yes.
Yep.
And I will discuss that later in the meeting, when we get down to 5E.
But just to clarify, and I'm not arguing what you're saying the dollar fee was for. I don't think that's how it was presented to the public.
No, it wasn't.
That was presented as a state grant in the future, to get a state grant. It was said as, for future grant money.
Well,
To show that we were in good faith, had some reserve. Now, whether or not we approve and go and say, yeah, we're gonna use it for this, I'm okay with that,
Yeah.
per se, but that's not how it was presented to the public.
well,
Back
yes,
when.
and again, I read it as that, and this is good intel. You know, all I'm reading is just paper documents of things that were written down. I read that as the anticipation of these future grant projects, like the filter plant one, the distribution grant, and others.
Yeah. They always said future, and maybe that was their intent and it just wasn't clarified.
Yeah, and it may well not have been very clear.
Yeah.
In 2021, when you're implementing that fee as part of your total package, neither of these grants had gone past germination.
Yeah.
They didn't have a funding agreement or anything else. So that's why they could have been future.
I brought my rate proposal rationale thing too. I'll read it.
Okay.
I was under, and I may be wrong, under the impression that state grant was supposed to be for part of the backwash pond, replacing 400 meters and 6,000 linear feet of distribution pipe.
Well,
Can I read what this says?
sure.
Okay.
If you ask me nicely.
Oh, yeah. Yes, Chairman McVeigh. This monthly fee is the grant/loan that the district is in the process of securing from the state for upgrades to our system and the water treatment plant. This will be covered by having a state grant loan reserve to pay for costs associated with the loan grant from the State Water Resource Control Board. Final estimates are yet to be determined. So, I can read that both ways, is exactly how you were saying that it's for, so, okay.
Well, I'm glad you did that, because that is the way I read it.
Yeah.
And, but I can, now that you read it, I can see where if I was sitting in the audience in mid-2021, that's out.
Yeah.
That's like la la land, future.
Pretty much. Anything else under
Now,
580?
just to remind, I put it in my memo, that this is in preparation for, in October, in our board meeting in October, we will have a quarterly review of July, August, September actuals to budget. And we obviously will have a budget discussion of potential adjustments. And for the end of the meeting, we do probably need to come up with a date for a finance committee before that October 20th meeting, which we can talk about in a moment. The next item really is an audit update, and I'm really only bringing this up because we've had a few interactions with our Horton McNulty Saturn auditors. They, the first is just an update. As you know, my goal was to get the FY22 audit done by April of this year. It just didn't happen. They primarily, I would say, and I wish Melissa was here to report more, but they needed a lot of stuff out of the old Bucks system that was really challenging to get. There were also, if you may recall, when we had, looked at the FY21 audit in December of last year, November, December last year, they actually had some recommended, they usually always have those journal entries, they're kind of clean it up. And I mean, it probably took 2 months of Melissa back and forth with Fry's just to figure it out, because the only way she could figure out how to do it was when she made the posting, it dated it the posting that she made it, which obviously had no impact on FY21 in 2023. So there's a lot of reasons why they're getting close. They sent us a note saying they plan to have it completed by November. But that was also in context of saying they did submit the state controller's required documents. We received a letter from the state controller in April saying, you're supposed to submit your FY22 audit by March 30th of this year, blah, blah, blah. And if we don't see what we want, we're going to come visit the district. So we didn't really want to have them come here and visit us. So they did submit all that information that the state controller wanted. They also sent this letter, and I said, hey, this is addressed to the board of directors. And they said, yeah, you should give it to all of them. It's really not an actionable item. It's just it's their responsibility to tell the board what they're doing as it relates to their audit. As you can see in the beginning, it's just, this correspondence is to discuss the responsibilities of the auditor, blah, blah, blah. There's also the whole audit and planning risk assessment that they do. Then they mention on page 3 some of the things they look at, like cash, accounts receivable, inventory, capital assets, and that list there. And then at the bottom of page 4, there's a communication things here, and they have like a bunch of questions. So these are all questions that are usually asked by auditors of managers.
Right.
So I know that they've interviewed me with these questions already, so they're far down the road on their audit, and they may well be contacting the chair too. So really, this is just an informational item.
It appears appears to be very similar to the letter they provided last year.
Right, with the audit, correct. One question.
Well, no, not with the audit.
No,
Well, they have the
Right.
responsibilities, their responsibilities, what they look for as a
Yeah.
preamble to it. One question though, because we did not switch over to bucks and we're still in the process of it, are we going to anticipate similar difficulties with the next audit?
no. Because the next audit is gonna be FY '23, and starting July 1 of FY '23, it's all QuickBooks.
Okay, I wasn't sure if everything had been.
So knock on wood.
Yes.
But that is one of the complications of this audit, is to make sure that when we close out the bucks, that that part is right, and the rollover information
Yes.
into QuickBooks is right.
Right, and kick them to the curb.
Yeah. And we did, you know, again, knock on the wood thing here, we only did a 6-month extension on our license for bucks and chips to make sure that 2 things: 1, that we had pressure on us to finish it, and 2, to get them out.
Yes.
So that's good question.
Moving on to 5C, then water usage revenue, March through August, rate
Right.
ordinance update.
So, you know, the committee had asked that we have a discussion about our revenue, and now that we've finished the month of August, sort of where are we at with March through August water usage and water year? And so I reported to the individual members of the committee that I was gonna look at it from sort of auditing the districts from 2 directions. One, from the treatment plant all the way down to your faucet, and then from your cash check all the way back to your bill, through your faucet, through your meter, back up to the treatment plant, but not quite that far actually. So that's what we've been trying to do. And I think there's a couple of, the other thing that I would just mention, and it's in your packet, we received the updated Bureau restoration charge thing. I reported that to the board a couple of weeks ago. And again, just as we get into it, the funny anomaly, this is the rate sheet, so this is your M&I and irrigation rate sheet, and down here is your CVP restoration charges. So for this year, they were $12.02 for irrigation, $24.05 for M&I water, and but that's on a fiscal year. So the water year runs March to February, and the fiscal year runs October, right, to October. And so the change in the bottom restoration assessment starts in October. It starts right in the middle of water year. So that, we plugged in these numbers. It doesn't have an appreciable impact on our current rates, but we can talk more about that. So I put in the memo just the first little cut on July, and I've now got some updated numbers for you to consider. But my first attempt was, okay, every month we have a sheet of paper that we fill out for the Bureau, and we report to the Bureau how much water went through the treatment plant. And I was using an example actually for July M&I water. We said there was 297 acre-feet of M&I water through the treatment plant to the district. Now, there was about 600 acre-feet of water that went through the treatment plant. A couple hundred of it went to Centerville, the rest of it came to us, and then we break it up as M&I, and then in this case, we have to break it up as Bureau, and McConnell water is all M&I, and then also we had irrigation water of 116  So if you just looked at, that's what went through the treatment plant, And then if you look at your July, activity report, we have water sales of 39,219. So you take that and you say, let's divide that by 52 cents and then divide it by 435.6. And that comes out to equal 173 acre feet. So we received money for 173 acre feet, and yet 197 acre feet came in through the treatment plant for M&I. So as I put in this memo, that's 123 acre feet short between what we reported to the Bureau went through the plant and what we received in cash from people paying. So again, that's why I'm saying, okay, well, where did we lose that water? From the treatment plant to the North Booster to your meters, and where did we lose it from your cash check up into your system? And so the irrigation, similar, we lost almost 56 acre feet.
Almost half.
Yeah.
Between that. Now, the monthly is not a good way to completely look at it. Just a second, Jack, because we read our meters on the 20th, and so there's some difference between a very hard, fast calendar reading through the treatment plant and what we read through the meter. That's why you kind of have to go over a 6-month period of time, because it all catches up, it all washes out. Jack?
Just real quick, we lost a lot of water through the breaks. One big loss. Would that account for some of that?
Yes. And that's one of the things I don't yet have calculated and figured out. I've asked the guys to go back each month, March, April, May, June, July, and August. Think about the major breaks, how long the water ran, what size pipe, and just, run a little calculator here to figure it out. So I really hesitate to hand you to this, but I'm gonna hand it to you anyway and just sort of walk through it. I unfortunately only have one extra copy because this is not ready for prime time. This is just me's, but since I see somebody in the audience that might want to be familiar with this, who can't talk, I'll hand it out. So this is a very complicated spreadsheet. On the left side, you got your months. You have your price per HC for each one of those months, because that's the other complicating factor that we have here. March it was $1.04, April it was 87 cents, May it was 72 and 71, and then June through August it was 51 through 52.
Right.
Then the next column is the Bureau's report per acre feet of what we report to them. And so just to be really clear, what we report to them, and let's say March is a good example, we reported to them 58.41 acre feet. 50 of it M&I, 7.4 of it of irrigation. We pay the Bureau for that amount.
Sure.
Okay? So the projected revenue gross, this line is just really taking that amount of acre feet times the $1.04. So this is sort of a gross. In other words, if we sold and got paid every drop of water that we reported to the Bureau, that would be sort of our max that we could get. Again, not water wells. So the other thing that we found out that I didn't know that we had as good of tracking on, but Chad ran and got all of the meter reads at the North Booster Station, and we converted that into acre feet. So water comes from the treatment plant, through the conduit, goes to the North Booster Station. One line goes out to the cemetery and to the transfer station and to the school, and we have a meter on that line. The other line goes into our system to everybody in our system. We got a meter on that line. So this column gives you your acre feet through the North Booster meter. So the next column is billed units. So from the Fry's billing system, we get the number of billed units for each, the M&I and the ag. We have, the next column is our billed revenue. In other words, that would be what was actually billed to our customers. Again, March is a bad month to use, but it just happens to be the first one. But I'll look even in April. In April, when we mailed out our bills, the M&I portion of those bills was $20,945.25, which represents 55 acre feet. Which, by the way, we reported 79 acre feet to the Bureau. So that's a loss of 24 acre feet just between the treatment plant and what went through the meters. Again, there's a date difference, there's a difference in the date, so you kind of have to look at it over multiple months. But the next column, that's our billed acre feet, so it's just converting our units into billed acre feet. And then there's a difference column. And then the next one is customer revenue from P&L. Again, this is an internal spreadsheet for me to try to figure this stuff out. So that's just taking off of our profit and loss sheet the revenue that we get for irrigation and ag, and then doing the little difference, and then your acre feet of revenue, and then your shortages. So if we just run it all the way down to the bottom, so unfortunately, I think this says printed out through July. It actually is through August. A total of 1,411 acre feet have gone through the treatment plant and has been reported to the Bureau. 1,376 acre feet went through our meters at the North Booster. So that's a loss of 35 acre feet, or of about 2% loss in the conduit, or about 6 acre feet a month. So because of that, just parenthetically I'll say, Bill and his new guy Brandon, over the last month or so, have been really fine-tuning and trying to do all their calculations to figure out, are they doing it right up there? And are they reporting to the Bureau right? And they think that the old sheets that they've been working under for the last 20 years are double counting the recycled water. And it may be around 3 to 5 acre feet a month. Not sure. But what happens is, you're running raw water through your filters, you're filtering them, and you're sending them into the system. The filters start getting gummed up. You shoot water back through it. So water's come through, shoot it back through it, washes up into the ponds, then you bring them through the ponds back through your filters after you've cleaned them up. And that water should, depending on which direction it's going through that filter, may be getting counted twice. Again, the backwash, recycled water, 2, 3, 4, maybe acre feet, whatever. But it's not surprising, and to be honest with you, not very alarming of 2% loss on the conduit.
2%.
But
So if we're saying 2% on the conduit, then we're talking about like what Jackie just mentioned, the breakouts or the.
Very good, so that's right. So the next column after that black line is 282,000. So from March through August, we billed $282,100 in water use. That's both M&I and ag. And that's equivalent to 1,109 acre feet. So if all you do is subtract that from what went through the North Booster Station, that means we lost 267 acre feet between the North Booster Station and the meters.
Yeah, that's a lot.
That's 20%, 19 years.
Yes.
So now, obviously the next forensic thing is that a meter problem? Is that a Fry's problem that's not doing the right calculation? Don't know yet, don't wanna say anything more about that except to say, that's a lot, that's a red flag. The next column is, our customer revenue. So in other words, this is what people paid us. So we billed for $282,000, we got paid $245,299. So we lost about $36,800 of billed versus paid revenue. And so our revenue, acre feet was 981 acre feet. So just the difference between billed and what we received is 127 acre feet, which is about 12% off of billed. And the only other thing I would just mention is well, we don't need to mention that. So again, we're losing 20% between booster station and meters. So that's where a lot of it is, big break on Linda, some of those stuff. But there's no way it was 267 acre feet, right?
No,
Are we confident that, the staff have gone out and identified every meter, that there's nobody using the meter that is taken off the lock? So that we're not losing, and that wouldn't be very much either though, so.
Right. But those are things. So in other words, one of the things, if the district had been an urban district, this would have had to have been done a long time ago. Pretty clear the district hasn't done anything quite this forensic in quite some time. And so I think we're gonna find a lot of stuff that is, hasn't been handled in the past and needs to be handled in the future. So again, it's really hard to know. I don't know, I mean, do we have some leak somewhere that's going to some subterranean,
Yeah.
groundwater basin that that we can't see? Are these leaks, more, but leaks shouldn't be much more than maybe 3 to 5 acre feet, that's acre foot's a lot of water.
yes it is.
Is it really an electronic problem? In other words, our meter reading is not matching correctly? Is it something Fry's is so out of whack of, that once we get to a new system will be better? But I do think a forensic view of our meter reading and how it's interacting and its accuracy, which is the other reason why I want to get all of 90% of the meters that can be handheld read instead of handwritten. The other thing is I think we may, I don't know, I haven't had, you're seeing the first look on this, we just finished the August paperwork that I just gave you, so just finished this today. I sent an email out to all my distribution folks and Bill and Kayla and said, okay, we got to meet next week, talk about what do we do here. Because the other thing is most places have their system in zones. So maybe we need to invest in some money in putting a meter on a north zone, on a central zone, on a south zone, to start isolating where it is so that you can, because right now all we really have, luckily we have a meter at the North Booster Station to see what's happening on the conduit and maybe what's happening between here and the customer meters in there. But maybe we need a meter here at Oak and Cloverdale Road, so that once you break off, you say, well, what's going on between what went through the booster station meter and this meter? And then, those are things that you kind of have to do. The other real, as I communicated to the staff, I said, at the end, not to belabor the point, we're paying for 1411. We only got revenue for 981. So, the meter amount on that is like 267. What we paid and what we received is 429 acre feet.
Mm-hmm.
And So the next thing that's a policy call for all of us to figure out is how do we institute that here,
Yes,
right?
accurately.
Yeah, as accurate. I'll just leave you with one other quick thing. The state looks at water law, well, you know, they're starting to really hammer urban districts on this issue because of drought conditions and all this stuff. But the state, so most of the industry consider 5 to 10% water loss kind of industry standard. You can get a big break or just other little things, testing, flushing your system, all kinds of stuff like that. You know, 2% of water loss in the conduit. So all that stuff would add up to 5 to 10. The other way to look at it is the state's general calculation is 35 gallons per connection per day is sort of a water loss number that's calculated. If you just run the number on us, that's 8 acre-feet a month for us as a district. So we're obviously way over that. So.
I personally just appreciate you going in depth on this. This is awesome. I mean, and it just identifies, you know, probably problems with this district had for a very long time, that they were bleeding water and had no idea why.
Yeah, and again, I thank you for that. I accused this chart of being the cause of my irritated eye, but I can't really justify that. This is more from an allergic reaction. But, and again, this isn't complete. This is really like ask questions. It's like, it's a great one, you know, that we've already thought about, Jackie, is okay, there needs to be on this chart, we take all these leaks and we run some numbers, gallons per minute for so many hours and divided by whatever, and that gives us the number acre feet. So it does. It also points to another reason why we need to get to an updated software system, but the other reason to do this is so we know what we're looking for when we get our new system as well, so that we won't be too surprised.
Once we get some more accurate numbers, I'm wondering if we can't use some of the information when applying for grants to help rebuild our infrastructure.
Well, yes, obviously. So, I mean, this is one of my, there's a lot of reasons why I'm doing this. One, because I'm pretty convinced the district hasn't done anything this forensic or accurate in quite some time. It's an opportune year to do it. We've been in 3 years of drought, so the district couldn't have done it very easily in the last few years. So now we know, it's like, we're gonna have a meter down at the wells, but hopefully we're not using well water. This is all gonna be used this one. So there's that. There's also, we need to be as accurate as possible to our customers so that they know what they're using, they know what they're paying for, and all the rest of that stuff. Because, you know, there are a lot of paying customers that are really subsidizing others. The other thing is the cost per meter, the base rate is subsidizing our cost of water.
Yes.
So that, we need to make sure that we're clear on that. So I'm thinking about our next 18 months when we go in to do our cost in 18. But thanks to one of our directors, who's present, you know, connected to another district, one of their baselines of success for getting a grant for some of their distribution, so I'm looking for money, right? So he said, hey, this will enhance our conservation efforts because it'll reduce our water loss by 30%.
Right.
Because they had some of this information. I would say it probably wasn't as drastic, but again, this may not be. In other words, we might be missing something, so that's part of why we got to go through the process. But I think to Director McVeigh's comment, yes, there's a lot of reasons to do this, and one of them is getting grants.
Good. Any questions from anybody on this item? No. Let's move on to then the WIN Act. with the balance left on it.
Well, in the memo, there was that conversation about a water usage rate ordinance, and again, this rate sheets, updated restoration charge, this de minimis impact, and I told a couple of individual members of the board, once we talk about this, you'll realize why a penny here or there on restoration charges, a drop in the bucket to use
Yeah.
the water revenue. Water loss is a bigger issue. So, the board has asked in the past about the WIN Act payments and schedule and balances. I gave a verbal report to the board a couple of weeks ago, and I just thought it would be beneficial to have this in a written form. Also preliminarily, we did put in our last newsletter an explanation of the WIN Act. So Kayla and I are working on sort of a series in the coming newsletters that'll explain like what some of our loan balances are. This is why we're paying $7.55 on this fee, and this is where we're at with that.
Thank you for that. That was a customer on Facebook.
Yeah. And so I think, to me, it's kind of like, duh, it's like, I didn't think of that before, but that's why you listen to customers, like, oh, that's a good idea. So again, on the WIN Act, and I think we all remember, this is the $538 that we owed the Bureau. So that's from the WIN Act, they took the money, and then we gotta pay it back, and this is what gives us our $15,300 in perpetuity. That $651,500 was after the construction credit of $207,000. And you can see just a little list here. So in the fiscal year 22, the district paid $102,106, and the balance at the end of that June 30th of 22 was $549,394.38. As I mentioned later on, the district signed the agreement in December of 2020, and didn't do anything, didn't make any payments, unfortunately, and didn't eventually get a loan to pay it off. So there's a lot of different things. So they took, thanks to one of our former directors and Bill, they met with the Bureau, they found this $207,000 credit, so they kind of took that as, well, we did pay something, even though they didn't. And then in fiscal year 23, when I came along, I said, hey, we just can't afford to lose this, our water contract, because it's the whole reason for us to exist. So we had the resources, and we made some extra payments to catch up. So our final balance was $199 at the end of that year. So for our FY 24, we've made one payment of $50,000. We'll be processing another payment on the 20th of this month, and then on the 20th of October, and on the 20th of November, and that will wrap us up.
Okay.
For payments.
So we'll be done.
And then, it's always confusing, I know, so the second balance is what I argue as what the district owes its operating fund for the WIN Act payment. And again, back when that fee study was being done, there was thinking that, oh, we're gonna go borrow $650,000, give or take, pay this thing off, and then we'll pay back the bank, and pay back the bank over a period of time, maybe 15-year loan. Again, this is rough calculations, but you can get there. It's $1.88 per play. And so what I'm arguing is currently I said approximately $450,000. You can calculate it very easily. It's $452,106, which is FY 22 and 23, has been borrowed from the operating fund to pay down our WIN Act, and it'll be, $600 thousand, by the end of this year. And again, we still need to do some of the accounting. I think Chair Fickus has made the comment that the WINAC fee that was paid by everybody starting in October of 2021 just went into the operating fund. And so we just need to go back and calculate how much of that should be credited as paying down the operating fund borrowing, right? So we haven't quite done that yet, but that's why I'm saying it's gonna be about $600,000, and then the $50,000 a year will be taken out of that reserve account to pay back the operating fund. And obviously the reserve account will grow more than that, so hopefully more than 50,000 goes into it, and so at some point we can pay it all off, and it'll get paid off.
Right, close that account, yeah.
Can you go back and explain to me why it's 651 versus 450?
Because it says approximately, so in other words, this is what the district owes the operating fund to pay off the WINAC balance. So approximately like I said, you can just go back, FY22, 102,106.
Okay, so no, okay, let me be
So
a
the
little bit
original
clear.
balance was 860,000, 868 or something.
Okay, so the original, okay, so we have to base it on 651.
I believe so, because we got a credit for the 207.
And we owed 800 and something.
We owed 807.
Okay, I was looking at 650 and reducing it by 200 to make it
No,
450.
No.
Okay,
I gave,
Thank you.
what? That was a good clarification.
And then we'll
I
be
should-
subtracting about 150 to 180,000 from that for the 3 years of payments by the customers.
Yeah, the original amount that the district owed the WINAC was about 858,000. And I really should put that in there.
Yeah.
Prior to the 207.
okay.
But I did write here, the balance after construction credit of 207 is 651. I just didn't have the original 858. So, good point.
Okay.
Kayla, did you have a question for us?
Just clarification, so when it comes down the meter, when it comes down to the North Booster Station, it's 1 meter, and then after that, it's when it splits off, like going down towards the cemetery and then off and so forth, correct?
Actually, it comes in and then it goes off to goes through a meter to the cemetery
Okay,
and through a meter to the rest of the district.
just making, that's, yeah, the clarification that it's going through meters, it's not like one pipe's going and then one pipe's metered, it's all getting counted, that's it.
Good question.
Does the cemetery use a lot?
A lot of grass.
They do have a lot of grass, and we do need to go back and take a look at that. Because you asked that question, I'm gonna take the opportunity to mention an issue that has come up. I received a call from the Shasta County District Attorney's Office. They seem to be overseeing some ZOG fire funds, settlement funds. And I was asked by this attorney why there wasn't a fire hydrant at Igo School. And I said, because they didn't ask us and it hasn't been, and they didn't pay for it yet. And, well, why don't you just go do it? I said, well, that sounds easy from an attorney's office, but there's a lot of complications for it. Not the least of which is, you know, we would need some sort of engineering study to show what do they need. I mean, what size meter do you need? What size pipe do you need? They have, I know, because I've been out there, they have tanks and everything else. Can they take what they currently have and put another tank, pressurize it, and feed the meter? I said, you know, it's outside of the district, so I said, we need to know from people out there that they want it. And it's not gonna get paid for by any of our money, because I'm not taking district money, customer money, to subsidize something outside the district. Oh, well, okay, well, so then I went and did a field survey and purchased some corn from Sandy Winters and walked up and down the Idaho Farmers Market to kind of see what's going on, and ran into somebody who asked me the same thing, why can't we get a fire hydrant? I said, well, you guys first of all need to ask, but you also need to, talk to your Iowa irrigation district. I'm not coming in there and doing anything without them knowing about it. And, blah, blah, blah. So that was kind of where that was at, and tomorrow I got called to a meeting by the county supervisor over there to talk about this issue.
It came up in their board of supervisors meeting, a couple of people.
And again, I don't want to get involved in all of the reasons, but I think one of the reasons why it came up, because this is what I heard and, standing over somebody's peaches, is that they're not happy over there because a bunch of the county sent millions to some nonprofit to
Yes.
trim trees and or something, so in the meantime, nothing really has gone to improve the area, and so they think a hydrant might improve it. But there's some security issues. We're just talking about water loss. How do we know if somebody's not stealing water? So there's some things that they need to know are issues, right? So I'm getting called to a meeting tomorrow with the county supervisor to talk about it. And basically what I'm telling them is, you know what, if you're sitting on a lot of ZOG money, give it to the school and the fire district to hire an engineering firm, hire Pace, to give us an engineering estimate, study what it needs, and then once you know if it costs $100,000, then give the district $100,000 of ZOG money and put in the fire. Yeah, we got a meter out there and everything else. In my opinion, it should be behind the school gate so that only the school and the fire department have access to it, and we can keep it so that it's secure. But this also, so I've talked to our distribution supervisor, it's been here a little while, and said, well, I'm not sure how we can do it, but yeah, it sounds like we need an engineering kind of estimate because of where our pipes are, what size meter it would need. Bill also said, yeah, that would be good too, it's more complicated, but then he told me, because I was always wondering why our drought ordinance had a little thing in there about stage 1 or 2 that we were supposed to send all these notifications to the cemetery and to the school and to the transfer station. That when the cemetery, school, and transfer station, and I gotta come up with an acronym that sounds really cool, but when the cemetery, school, and transfer station came in, there was some calculation for capacity costs, and those entities choked at that. And so the district agreed to waive the capacity fee as long as they agreed to be the first shut off or first notified or first reduced in a drought.
Interesting,
Yes.
because they don't cut back.
No.
Well, again, I just heard about this, so it's not like I've gone back to see if there's any minutes that show that this was actually a board decision, or if this was an administration decision. I asked him about the decision, but I mean,
By many of
it's just like our own schools and our own district. Yeah. That come off the water.
Yeah.
All right, so that's just, I thought I would bring that up because of the mention that you made about these fees. Thank you for letting me just share it with you because I know about it. Now, I did report to the board verbally all of the bank and account and loan balances, and so I thought it would be beneficial to put that here. I also, please, I had these for you 2 weeks ago, but I have for the finance committee all the statements, so please don't let me forget to give those to you. Like
This is 5E, if anybody's tracking.
Again, I know you were all trying to write these down frantically, so, and I think what Melissa and I were talking about is for like the quarterly budget to actual reports. We're going to try to have a balance sheet that shows you some of our loan balances as a way to get those in the public record, where we're at, and maybe figure out a way to have this type of a chart in there as well. as I reported to the board, the filter plant loan is made up of two loans. That's your $7.55 per month fee. One is a $4.4 million loan at 2.95%, and then a $445,000 loan at 2.54%. As the Finance Committee knows, you just authorized the payment of $110,938 principal of interest. That happens to have been the 50th of 60 payments. So we have 5 payments to go because we make 2 payments per year. And the current principal on that is $928,112.81. And for the there's a typo, $445,000 portion of that loan, we just made the 47th of 60 payments. I'm not really sure why we're off by a couple there, but so we have 6.5 years left on that. We have a principal left of $127,105.
Those loans were under 3% each, weren't they? 2.9 something and about 2.5.
Yeah, 2.95 for the 4.4 million and 2.5 for the 445,000.
Now, speaking of the 4.4 million, I know we have 5 payments to go, but we have a restricted reserve account of about 212,000.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that it came from operations. I'm assuming that back 25 years ago, that the district customers paid, or money was collected for that reserve account. So can we take that 211 and make those last 2 payments and finish it off in 4 years instead of 5?
I don't know if we can. It is a bit of a lockbox, that reserve account. And the 211 is prior to the 110. Mm-hmm. So it's now down to, a payment. So it always has in it close to a payment plus almost 2 payments.
Yeah, it's almost 2 payments.
It's a year's worth, I thought.
Yeah,
it's supposed to be a year's worth.
Yeah, it's supposed to be a year's worth of payments. I don't know, some of these state loans, they don't let you prepay them. It just messes them up.
But then maybe we can take those last 2 payments out of that reserve account.
Once it's in the reserve account, you cannot take it out.
Once it's paid off, then the state, they just release it to the district, and now we have an extra 211,000 all of a sudden.
Yeah.
So we'll have, in a sense, over-collected from the customers.
Well,
Yes.
we don't know that yet.
Yeah, I know, I understand.
We'd have to do some calculations on that side.
Correct. Now, while we're on this page, we've had this discussion before, but I wanted to bring it up again. That 211,000 is in a restricted account. I know there's rules and regulations on how or where it can be placed, but I would like to see where possible, monies like that put into an interest-bearing account. Because if for the last 25 years we were getting just 5%, you're talking $250,000 in interest we've lost. And another 42 to 43 to finish it off. So is there some way of moving reserve, and if we do have to run 5 more years, can we, through one of the agencies, move that money into an interest bearing? Or another example would be the car fire account, it's $177,000. So if there are restricted reserve accounts, are there ways of moving that money and gaining something out of it since we have it locked up for years?
Mm-hmm. The short answer on the filtration plant repayment reserve account is no. The longer answer is the other accounts, yes.
Okay.
The problem with the filtration plant repayment one is that it's a one-way lockbox. Once you put money in there, you can't move it out. Only the state can come in and take it out. So our bookkeeper accidentally double entered money into all of these reserve accounts. And it took 6 weeks of interaction with the state for the state to let the bank return it to our operating.
Right.
So, the best way, like whether it's CSDA and their reserve accounts or other Merrill Lynch, I mean, there's all kinds of different ones in which you're able to move money in, but you have to be able to get it right back. This one, we can't get it out and we can't get it, so I think the other ones definitely, I don't know about the car fire account. I believe that is a insurance payment, a lump sum payment that's being held in that account, and that we take money out of it for whatever the car.
We have to give it back, right? If we
And
don't.
we-
Yeah, if we don't
eventually
use it
have
all,
to
we
give
have
it
to give it back in. I think
But-
Bill has filed for extensions on
Yeah,
that.
and the fact that we haven't had that one in the interest-bearing account is dismaying, but.
So would there be a way in the future, if we do have a loan, say a grant/loan, and we have to come up with a chunk of money, at the inception of that reserve account, could it be set to where it became interest bearing? So what if the interest stays in there for 20 years? It's still growing.
Yeah, and
It
ultimately.
benefits the district in the long term.
And the fact that this particular reserve, I mean, again, if it was a lockbox and you still were getting 2 to 3 or 4% at the end, when they release it,
Yes.
the district would have made money on
Yes, and there's that money you would use for future
it.
grants.
All kinds of things, we could
Yeah,
have
all kinds
moved
of
that
things.
into our expansion and modernization reserve. And
Or the emergency
Right.
reserve, or all kinds of things.
just one last one on this one, the bottom backwash recycle, that's your 38 cents per month fee, for a loan of 413,000. We just made the 5th payment of 30 yearly payments of 17,000. So our final payments, year 2048, those were a bunch of pumps and a bunch of other elements on the backwash recycle project. That one was, I think, 2019. I don't remember.
2018, 2019, yes.
It was 2019,
Yeah, I think that's about right.
because they did it illegally.
Yeah.
Well, once we get this other grant project up and operating, maybe there's something we can do about this one, you know,
Now, I know the August is a preliminary, I understand that. Is there some way of setting up a, maybe even using the existing, like the emergency reserve account? And transferring some money in there that would help with the payments to, the various grants when we pay Pace Engineering or other contractors. And then that money would then come right back as it's reimbursed into that account.
Again, I think that would be timely for sort of the October timeframe. You know, we could probably use the expansion and modernization reserve to pay for that and then
Okay.
replace it.
Or does the public have to authorize that?
Yeah, but that, again, you know, I think would be a great opportunity at our budget adjustment and.
Yes. I agree, but I wanted to kind of get a heads up on, you know, my thinking along those lines.
Good. Good.
So in closing, can you tell the public that's here how we're doing overall,
On what?
financially for the district? How are you feeling after, 8 months being on the job too, of how we stand with our money?
Well, I feel a lot better than I felt 6 months ago. And I think that, the work on the water loss and water sales loss, confirms one of the things that I'm concerned about, which is our revenue to expenses, in particular related to water. But the work that we've done on the delinquencies and shut-offs and the increased revenue that we've received from that, the kind of cost controls, I was very worried that we were gonna have a hard time financing the WINAC payments, and it looks like we're gonna reach the finish line and actually have some budgeted money left over a little bit to use for other things than that. And as you can see, just from the last, probably, well, if you look at just the FY 23 end of the year, and you back out your designated revenue, you know, we actually had a net gain of about 27,000. You add back in the 32 that's supposed to be there from the Centerville, that is almost exactly the amount that I want to put into the reserves that should have been put there all along for the rates, right?
Right.
I think we can nail that thing, so
And over the
that
next
would
few
give me some
years.
great comfort to move some, I think it's 27,000 should go into one of the reserves, and about 26 and a half go into the other reserve from the rates, the base rate and the usage rate.
Right.
And the fact that we would be able to do that because we contained our costs the last 6 months of that fiscal year, I think makes me feel super good. I also feel good about our upcoming year. I am concerned about our grants and being able to cash flow that side of things. So that, and really feel hamstrung by the lack of previous reserves that were drained, unfortunately.
I think.
But I think my message to the community and to the board is, I think we've turned the corner and stabilized. We're in the gray.
It's a light gray, but it's gray.
Yeah, we're not in the red, we're not in the pink, we're in the gray. And that's a really good sign.
Yes, it is.
And I think the board has a lot to be proud of over the last 6 to 9 months to get us to that point. There's a lot of stuff we still gotta deal with, and Director McVeigh keeps reminding me that the battleship doesn't turn in a year. I'm one of those ones that's, because we've made a lot of changes around here in the last 9 months.
We spent a fair amount of money making those changes, but to the health of the district, we're on the cusp of paying off the WIN Act. $350,000 last year, $200,000 this year, this fiscal year. After that, that all goes to the bottom line or goes to reserves or something. That's what I see.
Well, that goes to, you know, we've got some money there, I think. Now, we had a circumstance in the last fiscal year in which we were not fully staffed during the year. So that helped, and there was reasons for that, so that we could get into the gray. So some of that money that we use to fund the WIN Act payments and a bunch of other stuff is going to go into making sure our staff, we stay fully staffed, because we need that. The other thing is I think we need to strategically look at places where we can make some investments in maintenance. We've got all of our vehicles are almost 10 years old. I mean, we've got, I can't imagine how many times, or can't really how many times, like, it comes to me that, you know, our torque wrench is 10 years old. Yeah, go get another one for crying out loud. You know, all these different things, you know, the shovels are breaking. So just a lot of negligence. So those are things that we're going to want to plow some money into. I think we're going to want to plow some money into doing some really good capital improvement planning. And then, you know, I just cannot wait to get, you know, operating reserves above 4 figures and a bunch of other things. So that's why we're in the gray. And the good news is we're
Looking forward to seeing where we end this fiscal year with account collection. I know in the budget, we have it at 90%.
Yeah.
I kind of set a goal, I'd really like to see it at 95,
Yes,
98.
yes.
I know we're getting close there. So as we reach that point, we're collecting an extra $10,000 to $12,000 a month. So 120 to 140,000 a year.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's big.
I don't recall the amount that, we had to wash, we had to let go because they were so old.
67,000.
Yeah, and again, that's the old books, so we're, one thing I do think we're gonna, we may need to have another, debt account write-off thing, depending on what happens with our conversion to the new system and how many we identify. The beauty of what Shannon and Kayla have done with the delinquent notices and all of the shut-offs. I mean, we went from over 250 basic delinquent shut-off notices 2 months ago, 69 or so actual shut-off hangers. To the next month, it was like, 100 notices and only 25 shut-offs. And a lot of those were just like, oh, they should have had a lock on a long time ago. Pretending.
If I'm, having done some research, I'm correct, it's sometime in the fall when we're supposed to, as a district, inform the county when we want to lien properties because they haven't paid. Typically the 1081s, long term. So it'd be nice to, instead of washing them, if we can do it, put a lien on the property.
Yeah, again, most good decisions are made with good information. So part of the whole process of everything we're doing here is to get as good of information as we can. My experience is, once you've got, let's say we have 250 accounts, I mean, these are real challenging debt accounts. There may be 100 of them that owe us over $1,000, and it's worth our time and money to get a lien on them.
Yes.
But there might be 50 or 60 of them that, owe us a few $100s, and it's more expedient for us to just go out and cut that meter off, and put a cap on that thing, and
Yeah.
just get rid of that account.
Mm-hmm.
And if that property ever comes back and wants something, then they gotta pay the capacity fee, go through that whole process.
I agree.
So, again, I think it's tempting to look at hundreds of thousands of dollars in delinquencies and say, let's just clean that thing up now. But let's chip away at it so we have some good
Yes.
information.
Any comments? Nothing?
The only thing I would just mention is we do have a board meeting next week on the 20th. A finance committee meeting in October. So we have a October 18th board meeting, and it would be great if we could have a finance committee meeting to really kind of talk more about this again, but also to go over the 3 months actuals, the budget, and just sort of that before it goes to the full board. So my challenge on that is we have a holiday on October 9th. I actually am taking the
Do you
10th.
guys really have Columbus Day?
Yeah.
No,
We don't, as the state, we don't.
I couldn't remember.
Remember, we stuck with Columbus Day. Most of the staff didn't want it. They wanted it as a floating holiday.
Oh, yeah, we didn't want
We
floating.
didn't want to deal with that. So we said, and I like it because starting in September, you've got, well, first of all, you've got July, 4th of July, August, no holiday, September, you got Labor Day, October, you got a holiday, Thanksgiving, and Christmas, you got a whole,
And then New Year's.
I think it's federal still does Columbus Day also.
I think so.
We cannot lock in a
they
date.
don't. No.
Oh, yes.
So, again, the 11th might be a little challenging, but that would be most likely the day in which we would actually have some materials, because, it might just be last minute.
What about the 12th?
We could do the 12th.
Doing it a Wednesday
12th might
before
be a
the
little
Wednesday.
easier.
I don't have my phone with
It's a
me.
Thursday. Thursdays.
I have it at home,
I
so.
can't commit to any of those
The
dates right now.
12th doesn't work for me, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Should-
For family reasons, I cannot commit to a date for the next one.
Okay, next to finance committee.
I have to wait
Would the
until-
finance committee prefer to just have a meeting prior to the board meeting
I would get paid.
on the
That's
18th?
quite possible, yes.
I wouldn't be able to make it.
When
The only
we're done
thing
with
is
the
that
meeting,
the materials wouldn't be any different,
Yeah.
it just.
I don't have a problem with that myself.
I mean, we did it once before.
As long as we
The-
have the information well enough in advance to go through.
The only issue that happened one time was that the ad committee tried to do that and have a meeting at 5 o'clock for the
Yes.
6 o'clock. And people started showing up at 5:30 for the 6 o'clock meeting, and it was a little disruptive, because I was one of those latecomers and going, oh, I forgot they were having an ad meeting.
Well,
So that would be my only,
we could have finance committee on Tuesday the 17th and board meeting on the 18th. The only challenge will be any recommended changes that the committee would have, they wouldn't be, we'd have to like hand them out, right? Because we will
Wouldn't
have
be
already
in the
posted the agenda, which is fine, I mean, that's,
Right.
it's not a big deal. But you will have on the 17th the same thing that'll be in the agenda packet on the 18th. The difference is you'll have a chance to talk about it and think about it, and maybe make some recommendations the next day.
yeah.
Why don't we do that? If you're open to that,
I
heard
cannot
you.
commit
I
to
heard you.
anything.
I heard you.
I left my phone at home, I can't look at my calendar.
So the
So
point
you
is
can't
made.
commit to anything, but that sound reasonable? the
That sounds
17th?
reasonable.
Yes, it
Send
does.
out a- we could-
October
On the surface,
17th.
it sounds good.
Yeah,
Well, I'll tell you what, why don't we, do 5:30 on the 17th of October? We'll send you a note to remind you, then you'll have your phone. with you.
okay.
Okay.
I'll have to request time off.
Anything else? It is now 6:51 and we are adjourning the meeting.
Thank you very much.